I want to know what other young men are thinking. I often feel terrible, studying for a degree that costs an enormous amount, working minimum wage with the faint hope that I will be able to afford a house someday. I have no time for friends, let alone to meet a girl. I am awake in the middle of the night, mulling over the woman who crossed the street to the opposite side since I was walking there in the dark. Older relatives in their 60s and 70s keep saying I will get over it and that if I work hard, I will get a nice house and a nice family soon. I feel discouraged too. When I was a child, I imagined a very different life. Story 1. I see no future. I am from a war-torn third world country, which could potentially become a failed state in the next 5 years. Story 2. You can work 60 hours a week, live a life of absolutely no frills or enjoyment, and still not be able to afford a house because you cannot qualify for a loan. You are also spending about 70% of your net income on rent and other mandatory expenses. Even with 2 incomes, it is getting harder. Story 3. Cost of living and state of politics. The world that we are inheriting is not what we were told we could expect growing up. It makes you start to wonder what you sacrificed so much for. Story 4. Mostly finances and relationships. I can't work a regular job and provide anymore, which means I have to compete with the elite for scraps. I can't find a wife in the sea of hookup culture. So what does my future look like? Broke and alone? I can follow my passions, which I do, but to no avail. I still need money. I still want a woman. These things are primal. The need to provide and a woman to provide for. It all becomes nihilistic. Story 5. Just the treatment of us in general at work, in relationships, and even during education. If you are not a bully, you get bullied. If you are a young man, you have 0 excuses. People expect more from you than from themselves. It feels overbearing, especially because homeownership has gone up, making the rat race even more competitive. We have also become disconnected, having grown up with texting instead of talking. Story 6. It feels like you spend a decade working hard to get a degree with the promise that it will bring you a better and more solid financial future. Except it doesn't, and you end up with crippling debt. Then you work a job that barely pays above minimum wage just to survive. You make the minimum payments on your credit card or line of credit, and notice the interest is higher than you can pay, burying you further in debt. You look around at your sisters, and they've all married someone in tech who makes $200,000, or they got a scholarship or got into a program because they are girls. Then you think to yourself, how is that fair? If you tell your parents, uncles, or aunts about this, they tell you to work harder. They say they worked hard in their day and look where they are now. They don't mention they bought their home in 1982 for $60,000, and now it is worth $1,550,000. They don't tell you that when they were working, they were not heavily taxed like today, or that coffee cost 50 cents instead of $8, or that groceries are 50 times the price, but salaries are only about 3 times higher. Then you finally match with a girl on the dating app. It is your first match in a month. You get excited and go out on a date. You take her to a nice restaurant, get dressed up, and open the door for her like a gentleman. She shows up late, orders too much food, and talks about her friends the entire time. She does not ask about your life or care about your struggles. When the bill arrives, you pay for it even though she has a higher salary and more money. You pay with a smile. She finishes the expensive bottle of wine you paid for, leaves an 18% tip, which is actually more because tips are calculated on top of tax, and then takes the leftovers, gives you a brief kiss on the cheek, the most action you've had in 6 months, and leaves. You never hear from her again. You spend the next 2 months paying off the interest on your card for that meal. Then you go home and turn on the television. It tells you that you are privileged and that life is easy for you. You hear calls for more women in film. You see girls smiling on television saying how great it was to be accepted into a certain program and how wonderful the opportunity was. Not mentioning it was only because she was a girl, not available to men or boys. You barely eat because you cannot afford food. At the grocery store, you try to find 50% off expired items which spoil anyway. As a single man cooking, it does not really make sense. You go online to express yourself and get banned, usually by an overzealous moderator whose life consists of being a small online dictator. So you cannot even do that anymore. The only thing left is to sink into your couch and watch hockey. The game is full of commercials promoting women's hockey, and the announcers sound muted. Your back hurts. Your knees hurt. Your head hurts. You do not sleep well. You have to get up early to go to your underpaid job, for which you are supposed to be grateful because at least you are employed. You have to pay rent, which has doubled in the past 5 years. Then you are told it is your fault and that you should stop listening to all those podcasts, even though nothing else is marketed to you. No one cares. No one helps. No one listens. Because no one cares. You are not alone. I am sorry you are feeling this way. I think men need to find or create more support groups. The government is not going to help. Women are not going to help. Society is not going to help. We need to help ourselves. Keep doing your best, but be kind to yourself. Do not put yourself down. Do not demean yourself like society has. Have compassion for yourself. Have love and sympathy for yourself. Hug yourself. Care for yourself. All the best to you, brother to brother, heart to heart. Find little things that bring you joy. Story 7. I studied hard and enjoyed my field. It was the bleeding edge. I didn't really have a social life, but I had to work through school, so it took a while. When I graduated, the game changed. Politics have pretty much killed my field, and in trying to translate skills laterally to related disciplines, it's now the norm to know several programming languages, whereas I only learned one. I come up old and short. Now I'm working a dead-end job at minimum wage, trying to pay off crippling college debt with bad credit and no savings, and still no personal time since I have to buckle down and learn new skills to be competitive with the 20-year-olds who, with more time and money, got the hot skills. I'm aging out of entry-level jobs, dating, familial independence, and physicality. I'm not mad at what I have to do. I try to be grateful for what I have. I don't know what hurts more, the shame or the envy. It feels like tripping on your face coming out of the blocks in a race. It's over and it just began. Story 8. It really hurts me to see how bad the emotional neglect is becoming with the children. No amount of games and gadgets can replace real human interaction. These children are entering the workplace with genuine disadvantages based on my personal experience. Emotional connection is the core reason we live. We do not live to work. We live to find happiness, meaning, and do things we find fulfilling. If you do not receive that nurture growing up, accessing these becomes very difficult. Then you may live for comfort instead. Alcohol, zoning out, and unnecessary purchases. This has always existed to some extent. My father lived like a machine his whole life. Work, sleep, drink, never really present. However, I am seeing many more people living this way, and it is tragic. Story 9. Just trying to find a job in this society is tough. I have been at it for a month after quitting my warehouse job. I have applied for hundreds of jobs and gotten one interview with my more than 7 years of warehouse experience and Associate of Science degree in computer engineering, and it has gotten me nowhere. I have not given up, but I have given up on a dream job. All I want is a friend to work with, someone who does not ignore, blame, or tolerate me. I could care less about anything else at this point, aside from enough pay to survive. I just want someone reliable at my next job so I do not feel like an aimless zombie. Story 10. The economy and domestic political and geopolitical tensions are concerning. I have always wanted to have a family, but now I do not know if I will even be able to afford a rundown house unless it is literally in the middle of nowhere. I am frustrated with the housing market in Canada. Knowing the luck of my generation, the moment we all get houses is likely when serious conflicts might begin. Story 11. I am a very liberal middle-aged man who also happens to be a war veteran, and I am very discouraged by the political climate in this country. What concerns me most is that the right seems to refuse to criticize the people they voted for, regardless of whether they agree with some of the extremely unusual things that are happening. Erasing parts of history, arresting judges, snatching people off the street and sending them to a prison in South America without any sort of trial, picking fights with our closest allies, bringing in an unhinged billionaire huckster to cut spending. This is not normal, or at least it used to not be normal. But while all these things are disturbing, it is the almost gleeful support these policies have and the utter silence of anyone who might dissent that I find most troubling. I am a middle-aged man and will be dead before too long, but I worry about the kind of world I am leaving my son. I do not quite understand how any of this is supposed to lead to a better place for him to live as an adult. To the people who voted for this, what is your vision of what the world will look like in 30 years? What do you think is at the end of this tunnel? Is it a good future you see? Because to me, it is like the prequel to Brave New World or 1984. Story 12. Overall loneliness and how hard it is to connect to people both in terms of romantic relationships and friendship. Story 13. I am not American, so my issues are different. Between people having extreme opinions, very expensive housing, and our government being ineffective, though that applies to both the coalition and the opposition, I remain optimistic about the future, but it is challenging. Story 14. If I went back in time to when my parents bought my childhood home, I could afford to buy it in cash. If I wanted that same home today and put that same amount of cash into a down payment, I would have a $4,500 per month, 30-year mortgage. Story 15. The fact that money does not have the value it used to is concerning. I am sure the governments are trying to introduce digital currency to better control us. There is also the issue that food is so processed that we are never truly healthy. As you get older, your body breaks down. That is probably the worst part. Story 16. We were never supposed to expose ourselves to almost the entire world so quickly and so effectively. We are still very much community-oriented, with small tribal societies and communities that work best for us. Having extensive exposure to international communities, trades, interests, the internet, and a fast-paced environment is causing many problems for both men and women. Story 17. Well, I can give you an idea as a 26-year-old man. The life script that we were sold, especially if you are around my age and have older boomer parents, has become basically impossible to achieve in any meaningful way unless you immediately become a top 10% earner right after graduating college. People my age cannot move out of their parents' homes. People my age are not dating. People my age, by and large, are not going out, socializing, or living life in any meaningful way because the world has become so expensive. The amount of debt that people are in is so high that the only things left to do are go to the gym and then go home to sit around and watch television, scroll social media, or play video games. I went to college at 18, graduated through the COVID-19 years at 23 and 2022. Then finally got my first job and started getting paid right around the time I turned 24. By that time, I was back living with my mom with $33,000 in student loan debt. I was also driving the same car I had since I was 17, which was a 2006 Volvo sedan that had broken down 4 times and had over 170,000 miles. It was the worst car imaginable. My mom bought it for me for $4,000 in high school so I could get my first job. It was no longer safe to drive, so I got my first car in my own name, which was a Honda Civic for $22,000. So if you do the math, I needed a $33,000 degree and a $22,000 car just to start my adult life, and that's not even including a place of my own, which would cost me even more. That is $55,000 in debt that I took out before I ever really got my first real job. I needed the degree to get the knowledge and credentials to even have a chance of getting an interview at my current job, and I also needed the car to commute to my job, so it is not like either of those were optional. When I graduated, I only had $8,000 saved, so overall, my net worth immediately after starting my job was negative $47,000. I think it should go without saying that if we somehow decided, collectively as a society, that people aged 22 to 24 should be starting out life with tens of thousands of dollars of debt, to the point where they will be forced to spend what they were told were the best years of their life pinching pennies just to hopefully get back to a positive net worth by the time they are pushing 30 years old. Something has gone very, very wrong. I did not pay off the car until I was 25. I did not pay off my degree until I was 26. That is living with my mom, paying $200 a month to her just to cover my share of the utilities. Now I have less than $10,000 saved, and in a few months I will be almost 27. I have gotten a raise at my job, then another raise, and I was given some stock options, so I am making more money than I was before. But I am still being seriously underpaid compared to my coworkers because I did not have any idea what a salary negotiation was when I was 23. Nobody in my entire life, including my parents, my professors, or even my career guidance counselor thought it was important to mention to me that salary negotiation was even a thing. So I am stuck making $51,000 a year now, which comes out to roughly $3,200 a month, plus some change. The stock options I have in the company do not fully vest for another 1 to 2 years, and by then they will only be worth something like $10,000 to $15,000. Given all of this information, I feel totally stuck in life. I do not go out. I do not have friends. I do not date women. I do not have hobbies that cost any money whatsoever, and I never spend money on anything. I have never traveled. I have never been to a concert, a festival, or a rave. My life for the past few years has been limited to my home, the office, the gym, the grocery store, the gas station, and the occasional trip to get a haircut, oil change, or new tags on my car. If I am feeling particularly generous with myself, I will either go to Chipotle or to a wing place that I like. The past 3 years since I graduated from college have been spent basically hiding away like a gopher at my mom's house, saving every single penny I can, so that I could get out of financial debt and hopefully have some chance of living a real life when I am 27, 28, 29, 30, or however long it takes for me to have enough money to move out of here. Spending any amount of money is out of the question when you have a negative net worth and a low-paying job, so life becomes incredibly boring and lonely. The only bright side of this situation is that now that I am completely debt-free and do not have many expenses, I should be saving up money quite fast now, relative to how fast I used to save it. Between the car and the student loans, I was paying over $600 a month, and a good portion of that was just interest, that is, burning money for nothing. Story 18. Other than economic, political, and environmental reasons, I feel people are increasingly disconnected from reality and base their ideas and expectations about life on what they see on social media. Story 19. The economy. I am really feeling the struggle right now, as are my friends and family, so I am also concerned about them. People are very worried because it does not look like things are going to get better. The cost of living is going up, and too many people are disingenuous about it. For example, every time someone on Reddit complains about the economy, there is always that one dense person who says something like, "Just move to a cheaper state," as if that is an easy decision. Sure, let me just move to a new state with no friends or family and without a job lined up. Dating. I know many men are terrified of approaching women in public, not because they are scared of women, but because they do not want to come off as a creep and because they constantly hear that women do not want to be approached anymore. So men now rely on dating apps, which are stacked against men due to the number of men versus women on those apps. Women are always one swipe away from someone who is either better looking, has more money, or meets other standards. As a result, most women swipe right on the same few men who meet those standards. General fatigue. Aside from a select few of my friends who still have fully remote or hybrid jobs, almost everyone I know is basically tired all the time. We are working more hours on average, and it is causing men to neglect their health because they do not have time to work out or cook healthy food. You know what happens when people are tired all the time? They only engage in interests that require minimal effort, like video games or TV. I am not saying those are inherently bad, but it is a problem when they are the only activities people participate in. Too many people feel like they are living to work rather than working to live. Climate change. It feels like every day there is a new heat wave record. Another species goes extinct, another wildfire, and things are not getting better. I am seriously concerned that this will affect not just me but younger generations as well. At least with World War I and World War II, those wars ended, but climate change is a war we have been fighting for decades and we are losing. Story 20. I am an animator, and artificial intelligence is making things challenging for me. I am caught in the conundrum of deciding how to spend my time. Should I spend it practicing my craft, or should I try different jobs to find an industry I enjoy? Story 21. Current situation. I am struggling with university and occasional recurring cancer, so personal aspects are much more impactful than societal ones. Right now, there is an election in my country, and American social issues have mixed with the issues of the upper-middle-class white supremacists. I have faith those kinds of people will not gain too many seats, but the fact that people are voting for them is a little discouraging. For reference, there was a First Nations ceremony at a war memorial, and a considerable number of people were booing. Booing during a ceremony that honors the fallen is disgraceful and does not bode well. Looking ahead, I am not too concerned about house prices. I want to live in an area where house prices are unlikely to rise, and I might need to build my own home. My family is accustomed to hard times, such as being low on food due to relative poverty, so I will be fine in that regard. Nothing much has changed. As I said, I am confident that society will be all right. My personal issues are far more prevalent in my life. When I was a child, I thought I would be selling drugs on a street corner, not joking, so I am in a pretty good place, all things considered. Story 22. Living in a high cost of living state. New houses all around are enormous because of minimum square footage requirements. The average price for a new home is $700,000, and they are not building condominiums anymore. The old condominiums cost $400,000 to $500,000. I feel discouraged because everyone is spiritually and physically worn out from all the work we have to do to survive. I used to be surrounded by friends and family, but now it feels like I have to force people to be friends, so I am reducing my efforts. Story 23. Buddy, we all dealt with and felt this. Television and movies that depict what it was like a few years ago are lying to you. We all said and felt this every day, even now. Take it easy and stop watching the news. It is there to increase your fear. It is fine. Story 24. Just everything. I can't get a job. I am broke and in debt. Everyone and everything seems to hate us and blames us for all the world's problems. No one really cares about us. It is becoming more apparent that not only will I die alone, but I will not make it to my 30s. Life has no light in it. It is darker than the closet Frankie is housing in. Story 25. The rise of social media and addiction to it has really destroyed people's attention spans, ability to research and learn new information, and ability to socialize. This leads to increased loneliness, fewer genuine friendships, and challenges in the dating market today. Story 26. We still uphold the idea that you need a partner to be a person worthy of respect, but fortunately, this expectation has been removed from women, allowing them to make fun of men for being single while being single themselves. Story 27. The current socioeconomic conditions are by far the greatest aspect. I hear you, my brother. Although I know very little about you, I would still advise that whenever you feel so down for so long that you believe it is not normal for you specifically, especially if you feel you are progressively losing control, seek mental health help. I wholeheartedly admit that many people, including possibly you, exhibit a normal stress response. However, the transition from normal stress and feeling down to crippling anxiety and depression is generally insidious. Although you don't have the time to meet a girl, do you feel you would if you had the time? Have those older relatives of yours ever complained about inflation or that it is becoming progressively more difficult for them to survive on their income? If they have complained quite a lot, that is enough proof of their frustration and the notion that, despite doing all the hard work they believe is required, they are still struggling but too egotistical to admit it because doing so might make them look foolish or inadequate. Don't take such pieces of wisdom seriously. If relatively inconsequential, call them out politely and firmly, present your rationale, and note their response. If they disagree without providing any proof, switch topics, or start mocking you, then, with all due respect, they are being dishonest. Hard work itself is not valid currency for your house's down payment. People working minimum wage also work hard. What they mean, but don't want to say directly, is to work hard at getting a very high-paying job that will make you enough money to get a house, partner, and a decent retirement income. If you want kids, you better also do a side hustle. Discouraged? That's putting it generously. Getting kicked in the nuts is more accurate. Although at present it is the only free and thus most cost-effective option, I fear that even my right hand might end up asking me for a fee per session. You are not alone, my brother. Likewise, when I was a kid, I imagined being wealthy enough to live a comfortable, not luxurious lifestyle with a loving partner and maybe 2 to 3 kids. Now I think if I get that partner, I will have to tolerate for some time a difficult situation. If you want someone to talk to or mutually vent with, feel free to send a direct message. Story 28. Young men, I was once in your shoes. I was down and out with the blues. I felt no one cared if I were alive. That's when someone came up to me and said, "Young man, take a walk up the street. There's a place called the Young Men's Christian Association. They can start you back on your way. Young man, you can make your dreams real, but you need to know this. No one does it all by himself. Put your pride aside and just go there, to the Young Men's Christian Association. I'm sure they can help you today. Story 29. One thing that really makes me question things is how much of our identity as men still revolves around lust. Not just wanting sex, but how that desire seeps into our self-worth, our choices, and our frustrations. It's like we're hardwired to chase something we don't realize is actively holding us back from truly evolving. Meanwhile, I think women have made much more progress in defining themselves outside of being desirable. They've created space for purpose. We haven't. We're still trapped in a loop of craving and resentment, and society profits from keeping us there. Pornography, dating applications, red pill grifters, they all feed on that lack of control. I think sexual discipline is key, but it must go deeper than just stopping the use of pornography. It's about detaching your sense of identity from constant female desire. No one is going to teach us that. It has to start with us. But I don't get the sense anyone is even trying to start that journey. As I said, society will not facilitate such a mindset shift, so I'm not sure how, as men, we are ever going to improve. Story 30. Gestures broadly. Well, let's see. My country is being run by an egotistical bigot. Psychotic religious zealots are setting the world on fire, trying to incite a rapture, while extremist groups roam the streets. Meanwhile, half the younger generation seems to have regressed to the attitudes of the older bigots. Story 31. The rise of right-wing leaning young men. Andrew Tate and the motivation coaches have done a lot of damage. Story 32. The United States government has normalized discussing blatant imperialist land grabs against friendly countries like Denmark and Canada. I believe that, in the next few years, I will have to make a moral choice about relocation, or I will be in the same moral position as citizens of the Russian Federation who did not leave after the invasion of Ukraine began. That is, tacitly supporting horrific crimes through acquiescence. I happen to like where I live and all the possessions I have accumulated, and moving internationally or disposing of my belongings would be an incredible inconvenience. I have a materially great life. Neoliberalism and globalism have worked out well for me. Everything good I have, from my relationships to my hobbies, is enabled by them. I earn far more than I spend. However, my situation is now more precarious than it used to be. Story 33. Do you know what those 70-year-olds were doing at your age? Worrying about being sent to the other side of the planet against their will, also known as the draft, to fight a losing war against people who did not want or need them there. Your concerns are warranted, but they are also comparatively adorable. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.